All right, I'm going to take you through the behind the scenes for my short film, Closing Time. Originally, I had written the short back in 2020, right after I finished She Knows, and I tried to make it just kind of on my own, but it kept on falling through, so I put it on the back burner, which I think was a good thing, because I think if I had made it at the time, it just wouldn't have been to the level that I wanted to execute it. But I was having a meeting, this was last May, with Dylan Clark and Cameron Gallagher. Both of those guys make great short films, you should go check them out. But I ran that idea by them for Closing Time, and they both suggested I should kind of revisit it. So that's what I did. I went back, I rewrote the script. I felt like it was time to up the scale of the project compared to the films I had previously done. So I wanted to bring a crew on. So the first people I reached out to were Close and Raymond. Close and Raymond starred in my short film, Night Visit, and both of them are super cool people. They've always been super supportive. I didn't have a ton of experience running these bigger sets, and so I wanted to find people I trusted that would help me along the way. So once I reached out to them, they were on board. Clovis was AD, Raymond was down to produce. I feel like half of the work with directing is just finding the right people to collaborate with, whether it's gaffers or DPs or ADs or actors, whatever it is. And I'd come across Jordan's work, I was super impressed. I knew I had to reach out, see if he was interested in doing some narrative stuff since he had mainly done commercial. He was down, but I didn't have the project at the time. So a couple months later, I reached back out with Closing Time. He liked the script. He was in. So once Jordan was on board, we wanted to fill out the rest of the crew, and Close and Raymond were huge in that. They started reaching out to people. We booked, assistant camera team, lighting crew, gaffer, grip, obviously PAs, and all of them were doing it for way less money than they deserved to be paid because they were passionate about the project. They were down to be involved with something like this. So not only was I really thankful for that, but at the same time, I felt pressured to deliver on the vision and make something everyone could be proud of, because if you're not doing it necessarily for the money, then you want to make something that you're proud to share with other people. So while we were booking out the crew, I also started focusing on casting, figuring out who would be the best to play these roles. I just worked with Adara on In the Dark, and obviously she's so great in that. She was awesome to work with, and she really did kind of fit the role for Emma, the protagonist for the film. And so I reached out, asked her about it. She was, of course, down to be involved. And so we had the protagonist cast. Next up, we had to cast the waitress. This one took a little bit more time because I reached out to a couple local talent agencies, got self-tapes sent in. I was going through maybe 35, 40 self-tapes. I appreciated everyone who took the time to submit, but the role is a little bit tricky because you got to convince the audience that you're innocent in the beginning and then sort of revealing the full character. It has to be believable. You can't lose them when that sinister element comes into play. And all of them, I really liked a lot of them, but there was always just a little aspect of the performance that it needed that was missing. And then I saw Haley's audition, and she automatically kind of knew the tone, knew what I was going for. I reached out after that. She said she was down. So we had the waitress cast, we had Emma cast. Originally we had another actor set to play Connor, but the day of, he got sick, he couldn't make it out. And so we short notice kind of had to figure out what to do. Raymond is an amazing actor as well, and so he stepped in to play the role of Connor, and so he was kind of our third main cast member. So we had about a month and a half out from the shoot to find a location, and this proved to be a little bit tough because, a lot of diners in Washington just were not interested in that idea at all. I think I had reached out to over 30 diners, visited probably 10 diners, and all of them said no. And so I was running out of options, and a month and a half quickly turned into 2 weeks away from the shoot. I still didn't have a location, but we had all the crew booked, we had the cast booked. I was like, if I don't find a location, then there's nothing we can do about it. The location is such a core part of the film. But I did kind of a last resort search on Yelp. I just broadened the search area, and I was searching for any kind of restaurant. I didn't narrow it down to diners. I was like, any sort of restaurant that has that vibe is what I was looking for. And I happened to find this ice cream shop called Big Scoop Sunday Palace, and it was perfect. It had the red checkered floors, it had the red booths. And so I reached out, I called them. We kind of went back and forth a little bit, but I noticed they weren't immediately saying no like a lot of the other places, but it was down to the wire. We had a tech scout planned for Monday, and then we were gonna shoot Friday and Saturday night. And we officially booked the location Monday morning before the tech scout. So it was truly a miracle that we even booked a location. So me, Raymond, Chloe, and Jordan met up at the location that Monday for tech scout. A lot of that was spent just talking to the owner, clearing up any questions, talking about what specifically we'd be doing, going over the schedule. And then Jordan and I stayed late and we went through the shot list that I had made, and we just replaced all the shots that I had set out with like shot deck frames beforehand and replaced them with shots with his phone from the actual location, getting the angles the best we can. It was helpful to actually walk through the blocking then, get some of that down, so that way we weren't having to figure out as many things on the day. I played every character in the frame while Jordan took the pictures, so everyone was looking at the shot list and it was just me. All right, so now we're on to day one. Normally on a film shoot, you're rushing to get all your shots in before the sun sets, but it was the opposite. I was stressed about getting all our shots before the sun rose. Because we booked the location so late and we were more beggars rather than choosers at that point, we just needed a location. We couldn't really load in until after 10 p.m. so it had been dark for a couple hours. We've already lost some of that precious time to shoot, and they always say the first setup takes the longest, which it did. We didn't get our first shot until like 12:30 a.m. or something. And so in the behind the scenes footage, you can probably tell I'm just panicking, just a deep-seated fear in my eyes. For camera gear, Jordan had just bought an Alexa Mini package, and he was down to use it for the film, so that was awesome. And the lenses we used were a set of DZO Vespids. They were within our budget, and they also had a little bit of that vintage character that fit the vibe of the rest of the film. Once we got the first setup done, we got it looking how we wanted. We kind of set the standard for how the rest of the short was gonna look. It moved pretty smoothly after that. We were able to move through our shots. And day one was a little bit easier because we had scheduled the bathroom scene for the end of the day, and the bathroom was at the back of the restaurant, so we could have shot that any time of day. We didn't need for it to be dark out. And so that was kind of a nice fallback, because even though the sun had basically risen by that point, we were still able to go out and do the bathroom scene and not have to worry about that lighting. So we got all the shots we needed day one. It was a little stressful getting it all done in time, but everyone did an awesome job. Next up was preparing for day two. Day two was a little bit tougher now that I had an idea of the pace that we were gonna go at. Try to see if I could combine or cut down or condense anything on the shot list just to save us time. I think I ended up cutting down the shot list from about 28 shots down to like 22, I think, because we had more shots on day two and all of them needed to be at night, but we had just as much time to shoot as day one. And so I was a little bit stressed about getting everything done. So there was a deleted scene where a late customer comes in and bangs on the door and startles Emma, Adara's character. So originally Raymond was gonna play that character, but because the actor who's gonna play Connor couldn't make it, Raymond stepped in for Connor, and now we needed someone to play the guy banging on the door. And it wasn't a super intensive role. We just needed someone who was down to be on camera, raise their voice a little bit, and be behind the door. And there was a guy named Bailey who worked at the restaurant we were filming in, and he was hanging out with us day one to make sure everything went smoothly and just answer any questions for us. And I convinced him to be on camera on day two and play the role of the guy knocking on the door. So that was what we started off day two with. We got those shots out of the way. It was just a pacing thing that ended up being the reason why I took it out, but shout out to Bailey. He was a super cool dude. Unfortunately, it had to be cut, but I still put him in the credits because he's just an absolute legend. Another thing that made day two a little bit tougher was we were shooting a lot of the dialogue heavy scenes, more of the emotional scenes like the reveal, which Adara absolutely nailed. We did 2 takes of kind of that reveal scene, and that was all we needed. She did a great job. So what could have taken a long time with other actors, Adara and Haley just totally delivered, and so we were able to keep up on the schedule and move through the shots. There's another scene I ended up cutting where Emma tries to escape after she realizes that the waitress is the killer. And that was the same thing where just the pacing didn't end up working for it, and sometimes that's just the way it works out. Even if it means cutting shots that people worked really hard on, if it makes the end product better, then I think it's worth it. You know, you want to make a film that everybody's really proud of. But we saved those shots for the end of the day, which ended up working out. There was a little bit of ambient light coming in because the sun was coming up, but that scene all took place when all the diner lights were off. We were bumping up against it a little bit at the end of the day because the sun was starting to come up. We hadn't gotten all our shots yet. For example, like the open sign being turned off, they just put up a whole bunch of floppies just to make it look like it was night, but it was basically, the sun had already risen at that point. But we did get all the shots that we needed. Shoot was done. Everyone did an awesome job. So next up was post-production. So I had a couple film festival deadlines that I was trying to reach. So I had about a month to edit the film. The first cut of the film was 12 minutes. I sent it out to a couple friends like Dylan and Cameron. Got some notes from them, and then I ended up bringing it down to about 10 minutes. And this was before I deleted those scenes I was talking about. I did a first pass on the sound design, kind of the best that I could. I did a color session with Eric Jackson, who is a super cool dude, and you guys should check out his channel if you're interested in any sort of color grading. For the score, I worked with my brother, Lincoln. He's a talented musician and producer, and he's always down to help out with stuff like this. And because I had such a tight deadline, it was nice working with him because we live in the same house. You know, his room is right across from mine, which would be creepy sometimes. He just watches me while I sleep. That's just kind of part of the price you pay. But we worked together for about a week on the score. It was really simple. I think it helps because we're brothers, so there wasn't a lot of back and forth. He already kind of knew what I was going for. Another big aspect of the film was the music that would be playing through the diner. I knew I wanted it to kind of warp and distort with Emma's mindset as she's getting more and more anxious throughout the film. And I knew I wanted the music to feel real, like actual vintage music, have that analog texture to it. I went through a lot of music licensing websites and tried to find tracks that would work. Once I took a look through MusicBed's catalog, I knew that they were going to be the place to go. It wouldn't have been possible without MusicBed, because with other websites, they might use songs that sound sort of vintage, but they were produced today, whereas MusicBed is licensing out tracks that were actually recorded during the 60s. And so that was super important to me. So I set out these tracks on MusicBed way before we went out to shoot. And if you're a filmmaker, content creator, in video production at all, I would definitely recommend checking out MusicBed. They by far have the best selection of music, the highest quality selection, and they have a 14-day trial if you want to just try it out. You can check out the link in my description. But big thank you to MusicBed, because this project just would not have been the same without their help. So I finished that first 10-minute cut of the film, and I sat on it for a while. I was working on the sound design with Jacqueline, who did an amazing job. We were going back and forth kind of slowly. I wasn't in too much of a hurry because I was waiting on festival deadlines, and we were slowly working through the sound design on it. And each pass she sent, I loved what she was doing, but I didn't like watching the film. And I tried to put together, I was like, why? I feel like it's a sign that something's wrong when I can't like watch through my films. So I sat with it for a little while, and I ended up deciding that there were some scenes that could be cut. I've already talked about which scenes those are. I liked them on their own, but I couldn't make them work. In the scheme of things, they didn't actually really affect the story, and that's a sign where it can be cut. If the story can still be conveyed, it's still just as powerful without those scenes, then it might be good to trim that fat and at least see how it feels. So that's what I did. I took out those scenes. Now it's down to 7 minutes, 40 seconds. I also trimmed a little bit off the intro, and then I sent it out to a couple people that hadn't seen the film before. I asked them to watch the shorter one first and then watch the longer one. Let me know which one they liked more. Everyone who watched it preferred the shorter one, so I knew that it was a good sign and that I was on the right track with cutting out those scenes. And so sometimes it can hurt cutting some big chunks out of your film if there are shots you like or you put a lot of work into it, but I would much rather cut those scenes if it means the end product is going to be better. Worked with Jacqueline, finished up the sound design, and there you go. It's a finished film. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was more thriller, less full-on horror like In the Dark or something, but I hadn't seen a lot of horror short films that had experimented with that sort of vibe, and so it was cool to finally get it out there. Obviously, it wouldn't have been possible without everybody that was a part of the project and gave their time and effort to create this film. And so I'm indebted to everybody that helped make it a reality. And as a result, I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Thanks.